deep sea exploration. It's clearly a very dangerous business. Now, a few days ago, you may have heard that a submarine called Titan was doing a deep sea exploration. Well, actually, you could say it's deep sea tourism, really, since those on board that submarine, owned by Oceangate, was, well, billionaires who, quite frankly, just want to go on a bit of a jolly. Yeah. And for one father and son, it was supposed to be some kind of bonding exercise. Okay. Well, all those involved, well, say all those involved, I say all those who died on that submarine that imploded, they all had to sign like a disclaimer. Terms of service, you could say. And they signed it after reading 3 times on the first page, risk of death, risk of death, risk of death. Now, who in their right mind puts their kid, 19 years old, in that kind of position? To tell you what, I would never put my kids at risk. That wasn't a bonding exercise. It was like, hey, look at me, we've done this. It's an experience, most definitely. And we do have a lot of, it seems to be a latest trend, doesn't it? Stick them in a rocket and shove them out into space, like Jeff Bezos. It's another jolly. Putting people's lives at risk for no real benefit to society or the environment. Certainly not the environment, no. Some things we just should leave alone. Now, there is a lot of whataboutery going on as well, isn't there? Well, the media is very interested, or has been very interested in that submarine, the Titan. They tend to ignore when mass life loss was taken over 1,000 odd people on that migrant ship across the Mediterranean, outside Greece, capsized with all those people on board. Barely a thought was given to them. Well, some may argue, but because it's a submarine, that's quite interesting. The people, we don't know what they're looking for, and we all want to find out what the outcome is and what have you. And we find out that it imploded, which we'll get into in a moment. But I think we've become desensitised. There seems to be so much loss of life, whether it be in the Mediterranean or in the English Channel, due to migration, refugees and what have you, trying to escape tyranny and war and crikey. We're so fortunate where we live. We really are. Can't imagine living under that kind of fare, can you? It's frightening. Including the people in Russia as well. Not everybody agrees what's going on with the war in Ukraine. They daren't say anything. That's fair. They're suppressed. The people are suppressed. Surrounded by propaganda. Brainwashed, some of them. Many of them, I would say. And those who do speak up against it, they're silenced. It's crazy. But we have become desensitised to death. And in this case, when I say death, I mean other people's death. The loss of life. In this, ship that capsized, there was women and children, what have you. They're in the holds of this ship. Could you imagine it? Being trapped there? Knowing this, you're pretty certain that no one's going to come and save you. It's all too quick. The Mediterranean is a very dangerous place, and so is the English Channel. It's crazy. So what can you do when people are desensitised to it? They're interested in submarines imploding, but those mass death incidents, no one seems to care anymore. I would actually argue it's maybe because they've got brown faces, many of them. Sickening. But then you've got this flipping tourism, extreme tourism. Like I say, whether you got up in a rocket ship or whether you're going down to see the Titanic. There's a lot of questions to be asked regarding Oceangate, that company is just immoral. It really is immoral. They rejected standards, international standards. That submarine was not pressure tested. It's madness, absolute madness. They managed to slip through a regulatory gap to push through this, they push a business ahead in Oceangate, as in these 100 to 150 odd grand trips to visit the Titanic. Still don't understand why you'd send your kids down there, I really don't. But I'm not surprised it's happened. I really ain't, to be honest. I didn't realise that thing was carbon fibre. It's not the materials used down there. Carbon fibre degrades very fast under stresses. And that sub's been down several times already. A little problem, other than in communications, there's constant problems with tech. There's no manual overrides in that thing. It required the screens and stuff that they had. There's no like levers and valves and stuff like that. Everything was just digital. It's nuts. Where are the backup systems? Now, well, even the sonar failed. Yeah, the location, like the transponders and stuff, well, failed. And they're supposed to be independent. In fact, they were, but they still failed. Supposed to have its independent power supply. The whole thing just instant, been an instant. If it was solid state, the likelihood it wouldn't have compressed. So they must have had voids inside. That's the thing about implosion. It's like it compresses everything that is air. It's about balancing. You know when you go up in an aeroplane, pressurised cabins and stuff. It's like the outside pressures and the inside pressures are balanced, so you don't end up getting sucked out of the plane. In this case, down there, 3,000 metres. Well, Titanic's about 3,800 metres down. You've got around 10,000 pounds per square inch pressure on that cigar tube. In this case, it's a carbon fibre cigar tube with titanium ends. And this is where the problems lie. You've got two materials that are working against each other. They move at different rates. You've got a relatively rigid material that has very little flex in it whatsoever, and then you've got these titanium end caps. And this wasn't much more like a cigar tube. It's madness. The whole thing is absolute madness. It was destined to fail. Is this a case of when? It should never been allowed. Now we need to be looking at things like this regarding international maritime law and stuff like that, and regarding closing these regulatory gaps. Now that cigar tube, even though it's carbon fibre, was still 5 inches thick, about 125 millimetres thick. It's, you know, it's like that. You know, that's quite thick. But 10,000 psi. That's 10,000 pounds of pressure on every square inch. Okay, it's imperial. Square inch of that submarine. Squeezed. It's been squeezed. And then when it finally failed, probably where the two materials meet, because they're moving differently with each other. Now, if you're a bricklayer, you'll know that you don't, lay thermalite, the grey blocks, thermalite blocks using a hard cement. Use a slightly weaker cement. Yeah, mortar, I should say, sorry. About 6-1 mix or something like that. This is it, given it. Otherwise, you'll be more likely to have cracks and failure. Mixing two materials together that have different physical properties, they move differently with each other. Like I say, that'll be the failure point. Most likely that's where it imploded. I doubt it was the actual tube itself, the carbon fibre tube. It's extremely rigid material, carbon fibre, but the problem is if it did fail, it would just, or in this case, so every molecule in their bodies that contained any kind of oxygen, like for instance, argument's sake, your lungs, you're going to have air in your lungs, well, I hope so. Well, that would just go, Every molecule in your body that has less density than the sea itself. Could you imagine that? One minute, you're this size, and the next minute you're like that. Frightening. Absolutely frightening. But it would have been in an instant, in a millisecond probably. They probably heard a few creaks and groans, and then that was it. Gone. Could say that was a blessing in disguise. I would say it probably is, to be fair. Because if you knew, like for instance those on that ship, capsized, trapped in the bilges of that ship, or below decks anyway, and knowing full well that you can't get out and no one's coming to save you and it's going down, how frightening is that? Now if you're a chicken, for instance, under that kind of stress and fear, your body has a reaction, or the chicken's body has, or your body, the chicken's body has a reaction to that kind of that, being that frightened. The meat on that chicken becomes tainted. It's like a dye or something goes into the flesh. It becomes tainted. Absolutely frightening. And the people here we should be really talking about here is not necessarily the 5 people on that sub and say, oh, they're just billionaires, they're on a jolly, oh, tourism, oh, it's terrible, it's, what is it down there? It was a graveyard, shouldn't be good. Yeah, I agree with that, don't go down there. But we should be looking at the people who provide the service and think that's a good idea. Because as far as these people are concerned, they probably, that'd be really cool. They probably give it a second thought. A lot of people don't, especially if they've got too much of that. But me, isn't it? Now, unfortunately, they've lost their lives as such, haven't they? But I think we need to be pointing the finger at Oceangate and also the media, because they give very little recognition to others who lose their lives in really extreme circumstances. And we say, oh, crikey, that's sad. Next day, there's something else in the papers, and what we're interested in is that. Don't care anymore. We become desensitised. We can become desensitised to the things that really matter. We become desensitised to climate crisis, become desensitised to refugees and what have you, people fleeing war and tyranny. And then we're obviously going to have the climate migration as well. We'll become desensitised to that. We'll become colder and harder because we're becoming desensitised. Unless it's actually slapping you in the face and it's going to affect you directly, probably don't care. That's the sad truth, I think, actually. And some of that is because we hear it all the time. There's so much of it going on, we no longer really care. And I think it's a crying shame, I really do. We need to be doing more to prevent these kind of travesties. But will we? No, we'll sit on our hands. Just like Oceangate did regarding that submarine, because they were offered non-invasive structural scans of the hulls of these things, non-invasive, so and they refused. They didn't want people to know, did they? They're operating in international waters, so there comes the regulatory gap. And quite frankly, we should be, well, leaving these places alone. Because what are they? They are a graveyard. Would you go and visit Grenfell Tower, for instance? No, didn't think so. You could argue, though, I suppose, there's, well, Normandy landings and places like that, the Somme and Auschwitz and, other places of, mass human loss. You could argue, should we really be visiting them? A few weeks ago, I went to Orador, where 650 people were murdered by the Nazis in World War II. June the 10th, I think it was. Should we visit that? It's different, though. It's not the same. For a start, it's open to everybody, and it educates a lot of people. Going down there and visiting, as in going down to the Titanic, and just so you can see the Titanic firsthand, through a little tiny port window. Well, well then quite frankly it's only available, isn't it, for a few very, very rich people. Where's the education in that? No. Because they won't share that education. No, it's just because they're distant memories. Things that say that they've done because they've got loads of money and they can. Anyway, you tell me what you think about Oceangate. That's just me sort of like rambling on what I think, because I just feel it's a little bit shocking, really, that we don't seem to care anymore about people losing their lives, whether it be in the Mediterranean or the English Channel. You tell me, what do you think? Please leave it in the comments down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can do that on Patreon or buy us a coffee. And the links are also down below. And maybe one day I might be able to afford a trip down to the Titanic. That's a really sick joke. Yeah, maybe. Anyway. Ta-ta. And have a lovely day.